Welcome to Security Weekly. I'm your host, Matt Alderman, and we are recording live day 2 at Black Hat 2019. We're in the suite at Mandalay Bay. Joining me for this interview is Jason Brvenik, CEO at NSS Labs.
How you doing?
Welcome. We see lots of your reports. What we're going to talk about is the importance of independent third-party testing.
All right.
And let's start a little bit with the history of NSS Labs, just quickly, for those who don't know NSS Labs. I think a lot of us in the community do, but just give us a little background on NSS Labs.
A little background on NSS. 2007, 2008, did our first group test. Group test is an independent assessment of products in a given category. It was for intrusion detection systems. I don't know if you remember, IDSs are dead now, but in 2008, the best product was achieving 50% coverage, roughly, of known published attacks. Right, and so that wasn't quite good enough. Nowadays, we see NGFWs operating on the order of 95, 98% of known attacks, but there's a number of opportunities for improvement there.
Yeah, got it. And so as we think about independent testing, right, you pointed out something very interesting. Back in the day, had a product, best product was doing 50%. Next gen firewalls, very mature technology. 95%. But now we've got all these new technologies. There's new markets popping up all the time.
Right.
And as we think about that, where does NSS Labs think it's about? When do you test? What's the maturity curve of the market first to say, yeah, it's really time to test a bunch of these products? How early or kind of where in the maturity cycle do they sit?
There's an art to that. In engaging with our enterprise clients, we tend to look to the areas where they're trying to answer some questions. Security's difficult. And we have the expertise to build environments that allow us to assess emergent technologies. But if you're too early, then you can ultimately put out a report that says, the technology is not quite right, and keep it there.
Yeah.
And so it really becomes when the enterprises, and the larger enterprises, candidly, are interested in understanding what the capabilities of the products really are.
Got it. So EDR is pretty mature, pretty interesting. I think you guys have done some recent testing there. But other technologies, maybe like container security, not quite there yet?
Interesting. In cloud, we're seeing, container security, the DevOpsy stuff, and cloud native has all the hype, but all the enterprises are doing lift and shifts. None of them are ready to go cloud native. And so we're really seeing workloads move into, hybrid cloud environments. And we're not seeing containerization take off for the enterprise environment. I think that's really the legacy movement of their applications and the workloads.
I had the old stuff on-prem. I'm just going to take it as is, put it into the cloud, say I'm cloud.
Right.
But it's running on a dedicated EC2 instance.
Exactly. And so cloud workload protection is where we're hearing very much the interest from the enterprise.
Got it. And that is a little more mature market than something like a container security and sort of those things.
Well, then you have things like SD-WAN, which came out of nowhere and is just out there everywhere, and everybody's adopting rapidly. That's a rapidly moving, fast-growing market that seems to be showing some really good value. Interestingly, though, a lot of the incumbents are very well capable and delivering security on top rather than net new technologies. So we just got done with our second round of SD-WAN testing. Very interesting results there.
Oh, interesting. So why an independent third-party test?
A number of reasons. One, building a lab to assess security is difficult, time-consuming.
Paul and I used to do it. We tried to do it. When we were at Tenable together, we had a lab, and we had products in the lab, and we tried to do some of that. But you're right, it's difficult.
And it's hard to keep the cadence, keep up with cyber in the first place. So organizations doing it on their own, difficult. Using a VAR, typically a vested interest.
Yeah.
Using a lab that will accept your criteria, come to you, and observe you executing on a test is maybe not as independent as an enterprise would like. Right. The independent testing allows us to listen to the enterprise, develop criteria that they care about, execute it regardless of industry interest, and answer their questions directly. An example of that would be, we're hearing from enterprises for multiple years now for NGFWs that they very much want to understand why their users are still getting compromised, even though they have these great NGFWs. You break it down in the simplest of form, the enterprise expects the NGFW to protect the user from the internet. But what they were finding, and we found in our testing, is that not a single NGFW handles any script-based issues.
Hmm.
So the attacker can fundamentally deliver exploits to an endpoint
Right.
using JavaScript unprotected.
Undetected
Yeah,
and unprotected.
correct. Correct. It's an interesting dynamic, though, because you don't want to hold an industry accountable for something they don't do.
Right.
But the enterprise wanted to understand the bounds of what the technology could do so they could go seek technologies that can solve that problem for
Right. No, it's interesting because I I wouldn't have expected the next gen firewall to be the silver bullet anyways. If you think about it, in some respects, right?
Mhm.
I don't think there's any one silver bullet technology. And as we see users coming off the network and being more remote in certain cases, they're not necessarily going through a firewall
At
either,
all,
right?
right?
Yeah. So why an expectation that the firewall was going to protect all this stuff? And so if I think about differentiation of testing from a VAR,
Mhm.
vested interest because they're trying to sell you a product, doing it yourself, which is really difficult, or going out to an independent body. I think what makes you guys really unique is you're not necessarily beholden to anyone per se.
Yeah, yeah.
So then, is it really in the criteria creation and the ability to really build a broad set of tests across the test group that you're trying to test against, and just really give just that just pure feedback on, yeah, this works and this doesn't work? Is that really where the value is?
That is really where the value is, but we still have a responsibility. We could go after a technology and find that it just doesn't do anything that people are looking for. I, I, I think there, in our last advanced endpoint protection, for example, we were able to circumvent protections on every one of these technologies, cause them themselves to shut down. There's an argument to be made. We used administrative rights in some cases, but pretty much everybody's administrator of the machine anyway. So not really a blocker to an attacker's behavior. But it's hard to argue there isn't value in the technologies, even if they don't do everything they say they do.
Right.
And so really it's just drawing good, clear differentiation between what the different product capabilities are.
Right.
So an enterprise can fill the right gaps.
Yeah. So what are some of the really interesting insights you've seen over the last 6 months? I mean, you talked about the advanced endpoint and some of the next gen firewall. What's some of the other testing that you've done to really give us an idea of where certain trends are going? Which technologies are people really serious about adopting? Because I can tell you right now, there's a ton of financial analysts sitting out there going, what's next, right? Because I
Right.
get those calls every week of, can you do this briefing on this, that, or the other thing? They're all trying to figure out where that next wave of technology might be coming to the public market.
Right.
What are you seeing through testing? What's that kind of next wave look like?
Well, so we're seeing consolidation of the security stack for operational efficiencies. People are realizing they can't operate multiple best-of-breed technologies, integrate them, and achieve their goals.
Yeah.
We did a breach prevention test that looked at a lot of that and integrated many of the observable elements from the different tests. There's a number of strong suite-based security technologies out there that are really good. And there's a number of potential integration points between other best-of-breedy technologies. But we're also seeing that consolidation drive a number of other behaviors. You mentioned EDR, for example. People don't want additional agents. They don't want additional things to manage.
We've been hearing that story for a long time, though, right?
And so there was a big gap in visibility that EDR filled. But we're seeing the newest endpoint technologies really close that gap pretty well.
If you truly could build an endpoint agent that's doing prevention, detection, response, and all those capabilities, and remove a number of agents off the box, that's got to be a win for the customers, right?
It does, yeah.
But are we there yet? I mean, I could think of a couple vendors that are close, right? But in general, are those technologies mature enough to really be that kind of single agent, endpoint agent technology?
It's debatable for sure. The alternative is operationally. Are we there yet that we can consume all that information from multiple stacks anyway?
True. Yeah, because now where am I going to send all that data?
Exactly.
Right. So you talk about some of the suites. There have been some interesting acquisitions this year and even into late last year where you're starting to see some of the bigger vendors in the space start to consolidate a lot of capabilities under the umbrella. Obviously, we'll see how those products come out in these new suites. But I do agree that there are a lot of enterprises, especially the small to medium enterprises, who aren't going to have the staff to manage lots of different tools. So if they can go to a single vendor and buy a bunch of capabilities that are all integrated together, from an operational ease perspective, that's got to be a good thing for them.
And that's really what we're seeing, especially in cloud delivered management, because it gets beyond the borders, follows users where they are, helps with the visibility, and we're seeing some pretty good capabilities of all that.
So I assume we see some interesting markets still consolidating. Any thoughts on where some of those trends are? I have some thoughts where I could I would like to see some consolidation, but are you seeing some of these markets kind of ripe for consolidation based on what you've seen on the testing side?
I would I would peg endpoint as the market most ripe for consolidation. It's a pretty big incumbent space
Yeah.
with lots of disruption,
Oh yeah.
heavily invested in. And if you look at the market cap of some of these incumbents, just the opportunity isn't there for everybody.
Yeah.
So we're going to see some consolidation
Oh yeah.
happening.
Yeah, what are there 85 plus and
Yeah.
EDR guys, right? I mean, you can't, and two of them are public now. Plus, you've got one of the old stand guards in the endpoint space been public for a long time. So yeah, I mean, there's got to be something going on in that space.
That's the one I'm expecting just to, I don't want to say collapse, but congeal.
Yes, it's a good way to put it. So any examples of independent testing results to improve their defenses? How you're out evaluating technology. Enterprises are consuming this. How are they leveraging your data then to actually improve?
Yeah. That's a good one. So traditionally we would do annual group tests. Every year we would test the same technology stacks or domains, NGFW is an example. Vendors, of course, put their best foot forward. And you can look at a group test as a roughly 80% coverage of a market. But the enterprise always has unique needs. And we're seeing two dynamics in the enterprise. One, annually isn't enough for them anymore.
Oh,
They want to see results much more often.
is it quarterly yet? Or getting
It's getting close.
Okay.
It's getting close where they're looking to see the results, but they want to see the results of their systems and their systems as they've deployed them, not just as the vendor thinks is the best possible, but as they've
yeah.
deployed them. And we've seen differences on the order of 50% between what's the art of the possible if deployed perfectly and what's the art of the real when deployed in production environments.
So how do you test for that? I mean, do you now have to go into the enterprise environment?
No. We have an environment, a continuous test environment that they deploy as a virtual remote office. And it is continuously subjected to all of our testing capabilities. And then we'll layer in our evasions, our performance, and everything else on top of. But what they're really interested in is how well their security stack is handling any of the threats we identify. The other trend we're seeing is vendors not in our test, enterprises bringing us their product and wanting to see the results. Right? They're no longer willing to wait. They're no longer willing to deal with it. They'll just send it over.
Oh, interesting. Wow. Where does testing go from here? Do we see more of this as the market continues to mature? I mean, I still think as security is still a little immature in some respects. Do we see more of this continuing?
I think we see validation pick up steam. The ability for a CISO to at least wake up in the morning and answer the question, what am I doing next? And what I've done, is it working?
Right.
Without testing, regardless of where you get it, whether it's internal teams, external teams, or attackers, whether or not it really works is kind of an open question until a breach occurs.
Exactly.
Right.
So how do you cover the technologies I have that I think are protecting me and what's on the horizon that I'm going to have to deploy in my environment as things continue to morph and change? Because there is a lot of change in these enterprises, as you've talked about with lift and shift, and then eventually, containerization, which hasn't gone the way we maybe thought it would, but that's going to change what people have to worry about protecting in the future. If testing's a great way to validate these products so they know what to buy, obviously you're helping the CISO build a better security program.
Very much so, very much so. And at the end of the day, people simply want to know what they can do to improve. Right?
Right.
They know they have security. They know they have capabilities. They know they have a talent shortage. Our technologies in security have not been user-friendly. They're improving greatly.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to inadvertently click a box and change your protection profile entirely and not know it. Right?
Yeah.
And so that's what people are wanting to know. How can they improve? How can they identify? What are the little things?
Yeah. Are CISOs making major technology changes in security based on the results they're seeing?
I am seeing CISOs consider consolidation of their technology stack, eliminating an IPS or a firewall or
Mm,
duplication or an endpoint or a WAF, rather than try to expand and have more coverage,
mm,
realizing that just the blocking and tackling and perfecting the art
yeah.
of the blocking and tackling will get them far better than the technology that solves the latest whatever.
Yeah, that's actually interesting if you think about it for a second, right? Is that they're using these testing results to make decisions about improving their current capabilities, but not really looking to expand yet. And I think that's good for people to make sure that their products are still effective
Hmm.
once they've been bought and installed in the environment. So
Yep.
vendors, look out,
Yeah.
right? You're still getting tested even after the sale is done, because if you
Hmm.
want the renewal, you've got to do it.
I saw a number of renewals this year go very different directions based on results.
Wow, interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I think that's really good for the vendor community to know, because a lot of these companies spend so much time to acquire the customer and then get their stuff installed, and they're thinking, okay, I'm the incumbent, I'm going to get the renewal because
Hmm.
rip
Hmm.
and replace is expensive. But if
Hmm.
CISOs are actually making those decisions based on test results, then testing is actually going to make all the vendors that are out there, I think, better to make
Hmm.
sure that they continue to, hit a certain baseline of capabilities to stay in the environment, which is good.
In one of our, I won't use any names, but in one of our test domains, a vendor didn't show up,
Mm.
actively avoided. The enterprise said, we want to see it. So they sent us a box, got a private engagement, understood their own results, and I understand right now there's a $40 million deployment happening as a result
Oh,
to
wow.
replace them.
To replace them.
To replace them.
Wow. Interesting.
So simply not being there can be bad.
It can be bad as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, people want to see the results, and if CISOs are using this to make decisions, be prepared.
Yeah, and everybody understands nothing's perfect, right?
Yeah,
But they want to see people care and push to do better,
right.
not just in their internal environments, but in their suppliers.
Yeah.
If they don't feel like they have that partnership, they don't feel like they can be successful, they'll go find the people that do.
Oh, very interesting. Jason, if anybody wants to learn more about NSS Labs, where should they go?
NSSLabs.com, of course.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you soon.